welcome you to the 10th Dr. L.M. Singhvi Memorial Lecture on the theme India's Soft Power to celebrate and continue the legacy of a celebrated individual, Dr. L.M. Singhvi. Obviously, we have an August gathering among students and faculty members. I welcome you all. Without much ado, I invite Professor Dr. C. Raj Kumar to please make the welcome address.
Very good evening to you. It is indeed my proud privilege to welcome all of you to this 10th Dr. L.M. Singhvi Memorial Lecture that has been instituted by the kind generosity and philanthropic initiative of Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. We have been doing a number of initiatives under the aegis of this endowment, and my colleague Dr. Professor Srijit will brief you about it. We are here to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. L.M. Singhvi, and I think it is only fair to say that there is a very good sort of phrase that describes Dr. L.M. Singhvi. He is India's vibgyor man, and that essentially captures the many facets of his personality. In fact, recently, one of the bylines I had written for our own Chancellor about his contribution that absolutely describes Dr. L.M. Singhvi's contribution is that one life is not enough. In many ways, his contribution spans across so many areas of public life, and he will remain as one of India's leading public intellectual as well. So I also want to take this moment to thank Dr. Abhishek Singhvi for his contribution to establish this endowment, but also to have his own leadership as one of India's leading lawyers as well as jurists, in many ways contributed to the development of law and justice. In a few lines, if I have to describe Abhishek Singhvi, I can only trace back to what one of the world's leading jurists, Mark Galanter, described. Mark Galanter talked about the many types of lawyers that we have in India, and they have been given different status and designations. If you're a young lawyer, you're called an advocate. Then if you've attained a certain high level of distinction in your legal profession, you are conferred the status of a senior advocate by the Supreme Court and High Courts in many cases. And that's the highest designation you typically get as a lawyer. But what Mark Galanter said was there is a new category, a unique category of lawyer whom he calls the grand advocate. And he mentions there are only very few grand advocates in India who have shaped the evolution of legal profession and indeed provide leadership to every aspect of the evolution of law and justice, and Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi is one such person. So thank you very much, Abhishek, for your contribution. The last, I want to quickly introduce and welcome our distinguished speaker, who does not need any introduction. Abhishek actually chided me that you're doing injustice to Shashi by having him in this small room when he should be addressing 1,000 people. Thankfully, Abhishek, thankfully Shashi did not insist, as Michael Sandel, who is a distinguished Harvard professor, would do, which is that he needs 1,000 people or more to actually address. We preferred quality over quantity, so today we have an intimate group of people. Of course, we are recording this, and I'm sure this will be telecasted and viewed by many more people outside this room. But all I want to say about Shashi Thaoor is that he's one of the most important individuals that has inspired many generations of young individuals, not just in India, but around the world. He transcends his party and the limitations at times imposed by his party. But he is a man who is liked and loved and really celebrated by individuals beyond any particular profession. You simply cannot box Shashi Thaoor, and that also makes him very special. We can be very sure that wherever he goes, he is constantly attracted by people from different persuasions, different individuals, essentially transcending almost all barriers that are usually there when it comes to people wanting to listen to somebody. So I'm grateful to Shashi. Shashi is one person who inspired me personally because he was one of those individuals who I discussed about the idea of the university long before I met Mr. Jindal, or for that matter, anybody else in this effort. Way back as a young student at Harvard in the year 2000, it was 25 years ago, I met Shashi Thaoor for the first time, and he inspired me then, and he continues to inspire me now. And he has now attended and spoken at more than 25 events hosted by our university on campus and outside. and I have not paid him a single rupee for that. So lawyers take the cue on that. Shashi has been most generous with his time, and I deeply appreciate him for that. With those words, I want to once again extend a warm welcome to all of you. We are here to listen to two giants. Both of them will be speaking to us shortly. I will quickly invite my colleague, Dr. Srijit, who is the Executive Dean of the Law School and Dean of Strategy in my office, to share a little bit about the Singhvi endowment and also the contributions of Dr. L.M. Singhvi. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 10th Dr. L.M. Singhvi Memorial Lecture to be delivered by Dr. Shashi Thaoor on the topic India's soft power. As Vice Chancellor mentioned, I'm here to speak a bit about the contributions of Dr. L.M. Singhvi, and through that, I'll speak a bit about the Singhvi endowment in Jindal Global Law School. My law school is truly honored to have this endowment. Dr. L.M. Singhvi, everybody knows he was a diplomat, statesman, and a scholar. But Dr. Singhvi had great faith in the constitutive potential of law. He cherished international law, a discipline which is also closer to my heart. He found international law as a means of comity, as a universalizing medium, and at its fullest potential, a universal consciousness. But did Dr. Singhvi believe in norms? If yes, and seemingly so, was he really caught between the objectivity of international law and, as a statesman, the subjectivity of international relations? It's true that one cannot have both. Either you have to embrace the objectivity of law, or you have to embrace the subjectivity of politics. Because you find binaries there. Law and politics, idealism versus realpolitik, the utopian promise of community interest with the apologism of state interest. But Dr. L.M. Singhvi devised a formula. I would call that the Singhvi formula, to stand between the objectivity of law and the subjectivity of politics. So he sensed that, pretty much like the critical legal theorist, that law is nothing but politics. And one can find politics in the thickets of norms, which are otherwise, dry bones without any marrow. And he found these norms as not as an end, but as an extraordinary medium for advancing interstate relations, and at times the self-interest of the states. Well, it's not a sin to have self-interest. On balance, Dr. Singhvi sensed that there is soft power in the operations of international law and international relations, and he always stood between the intersections. And it's exactly that intersection which Jindal Global Law School has decided to celebrate by hosting an annual conference on L.M. Singhvi International Conference on International Law and International Relations. And every year we celebrate that intersections, which Dr. L.M. Singhvi found as a vantage point and as probably his formula. Now, he probably sensed that the truth lies neither in idealism nor in realpolitik, but somewhere in between. And he was probably the first one to write very candidly, even though he didn't use the expression soft power, which would take years for Joseph Nee to coin. He literally found that soft power is what determines outcomes, and of course states behave according to the soft power. We also conduct Singhvi Memorial, L.M. Singhvi Memorial lectures in Jindal Global Law School. And of course, this is not only to continue to celebrate the legacy of Dr. L.M. Singhvi, but also to celebrate his vantage points, his strength, and also for his insights and sagacity, which helped international law to coexist with politics, to interstate relations. And today, too, we are exactly going to talk about that intersections when Dr. Thaoor chose the topic, India's soft power. I know that I'm standing between you and Dr. Thaoor. Hence, I don't want to stretch the speech much, but thank you everyone for joining here. And Jindal Global Law School once more feels honored to invite all of you to Dr. L.M. Singhvi Memorial Lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Rajkumar and Professor Srijit, for the welcome address and introductory remarks. Without much ado, I do call upon Dr. Abhishek Singhvi, Member of Parliament Rajya Sabha and Senior Advocate Supreme Court of India, for the presidential address.
My dear friend and colleague, Dr. Shashi Thaoor, Vice Chancellor Rajkumar, dear friends like Mike Wilson, one of our oldest honorary Indians, so many distinguished names, I'm not taking individual names, distinguished members of this very august audience, friends. One description of the role of a chair, which is what is advertised for me today, is to sit wisely, smile occasionally, speak sparingly, and walk out quietly. I believe this is doubly and trebly true when you have as powerful a keynote speaker as Shashi Tharoor. My only problem is, I'm sure you share this problem with me, that many of us ordinary mortals may find it difficult to comprehend the speed of his thought and the vehicles of his expression on the issue of India's soft power. Let me give you an example. I'll tell you each word has a meaning. Perhaps only he knows the meaning and I had to research it out. For example, we are all aware what a logophile our memorial lecturer is. I invite you all to be his milvers, not only apropos his wordplay, but with regard to our topic for today. His lecture on India's soft power promises neither to be a farrago of ideas, nor a rodomontade, as we have usually come to expect from our ruling class, but promises to be parturient with ideas, engaging us more deeply on the topic beyond the conventional levers of soft power, such as Bollywood and yoga. I have no doubt that it would satiate our eager audience's intellectual esurience. Now we'll discuss after the lecture what these words mean, but he knows them, possibly from birth. Well, friends, I am not doing a Shashi Tharoor on Tharoor, but only warning you because Vice Chancellor Rajkumar forgot to place dictionaries on each chair today. Shashi's vocabulary has a life of its own. He could say, for example, antagonistic geopolitical dynamics, and you would not nod like you understood, only to Google it later and realize he's just said global problems. I once heard him describe a rainstorm as, quote, an erratic and sporadic precipitation event accompanied by a cacophony of thunderous reverberations. That's not your quote, it's made up man. I said, I'm trying to do a Shashi Tharoor on a Shashi Tharoor. But I'm sure you will not ask for directions to the nearest hospital to treat concussion from verbal cyclone. I asked Shashi what he thought of the weather, and he gave me a response so complex that I thought I had been enrolled in a master's course in meteorology. He can turn the simplest idea into a very easy, flowing 45-minute TED talk. It has been rumored that even his spell check is afraid to correct him. I tried using one of his words in a conversation the other day, and it felt like accidentally I had cracked the Da Vinci Code. So Shashi Tharoor's speeches come with a warning, caution, may cause intellectual dizziness, spontaneous existentialist crises, and excessive use of Google. Listening to him, friends, may also cause short-term amnesia, but certainly long-term admiration. As the presiding officer tonight, I'm supposed to be the one who keeps things running smoothly. But when you have someone like Dr. Tharoor in the room, it feels more like I have been given a license to moderate an intellectual tsunami. My job only is to make sure that no one drowns in the vocabulary flood. Friends, the second part of this triangle is soft power. What is soft power? Of course, Dr. Tharoor will soon tell us. But soft power is like being the cool kid at school. The kid you don't have to push anyone around, but everyone still wants to hang around with you. Hard power, on the other hand, is like the bully. They get noticed, but no one really wants to sit next to them at lunch. Soft power, friends, is like the global impact of music. You don't need to understand the language, but you know every word of a song because the rhythm and the melody make you feel like part of something bigger. You don't even know how it happened, but you are singing along. Soft power is like the influence of pop culture. You don't realize how strong it is until you find yourself wearing a t-shirt with the slogan in a language you don't speak, quoting a meme you don't fully understand, and using hashtags like you are a part of some global club. Soft power is diplomacy with a bit of charm and a lot of patience. Soft power is like the influence of a great story. It does not matter where you are from or what language you speak. Once that story is told, people are on your side before they even realize that they have joined your team. So friends, ultimately soft power is like magic. It's all about influencing without even trying. Soft power is like that quiet person at work who never raises his or her voice, but somehow gets everyone to do their bidding. Friends, as I end the third part of the triangle, my father was a multifaceted man and typified the true definition of a Renaissance man. Raj used the word Vibgyor man, a phrase used in an obituary article on my father by Gopal Gandhi. Vibgyor in Indian context means a Renaissance or a rainbow person, multicolored, multifaceted. And if you look up the true meaning of a Renaissance person is one who is a master of many subjects. This concept of jack of all and master of none is a post-Renaissance concept. His diplomacy in UK touched as great heights as his glorious career in law, which he readily gave up when he took up the High Commissionership. He was a man of ideas above all. Both Law Day, now celebrated as Constitution Day, were conceptualized and drafted by him way back in 1980s, as was the entire diaspora movement based on his seminal and comprehensive report on Pravasi Bharatiya. He coined both the words Lokpal and Lokayukt in the 1960s and strove ceaselessly for decades to operationalize them in our body politic. He wrote the report which led to the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments on Panchayati Raj, a revolution in Panchayati Raj and local self-government. As a member of parliament, he believed in and practiced cross-party large-heartedness and magnanimity and shunned the narrow walls of divisiveness and distrust. He could converse in Sanskrit, actually converse in Sanskrit. He complained to me in the 1970s that his Sanskrit is going bad because he has nobody to converse with. And speak extempore in English and Hindi with equal command and authority. He was a Hindi poet who was also Rajasthan's first Rotary scholar to Harvard in the early 50s and taught briefly at Berkeley after completing his doctorate in record time at Cornell. It is therefore truly befitting, friends, that a talented scholar, an erudite man, a diplomat par excellence, and above all a highly multifaceted politician is delivering this memorial lecture. Perhaps, as Raj has now realized, perhaps Vice Chancellor Rajkumar organized this in relatively short notice. Otherwise, this memorial lecture and lecturer deserves a bigger auditorium and a far bigger audience. Thank you very much, and a great big welcome to Shashi Tharoor.
Before I invite Shashi, I should tell you that this morning we had a conference call, the three of us. One of the most important questions which Abhishek always asks is that, what are we going to wear this evening? And Abhishek was saying that he might be wearing a black and white kind of a dress which befits the lawyer. And Shashi said that he will do more like a green and saffron reflecting his political party. And then I suggested that we should all do pink. So we planned and discussed for 20 minutes and decided that all of us would wear a pink color dress. So over to you, Shashi.
I'm glad to see you're in the pink. Very good evening to this select audience present here today. It's a privilege and an honor to be here for the 10th Dr. L.M. Singhvi Memorial Lecture. I'm sure in the smallest auditorium ever conceived for this lecture in these 10 years. But anyway, it's wonderful to pay tribute to a man whose life and work continue in many ways to shape our collective understanding of law, diplomacy, and culture. Dr. Singhvi was not just a distinguished statesman, jurist, scholar, and diplomat. He was a visionary who believed in the power of ideas to influence and inspire. His legacy serves as a testament to the enduring strength of intellect, dialogue, and cultural identity in shaping a nation's global standing. So I was pleased to accept the request of Vice Chancellor Rajkumar and my dear friend Abhishek Manu Singhvi to be part of this occasion. OP Jindal Global University has been at the forefront of academic excellence and discourse in recent years, and it's a fitting venue, therefore, to reflect on the issues and values that Dr. Singhvi championed. I only had the pleasure of meeting him and conversing with him once. I know he was a luminary whose intellect, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to justice left an indelible mark on India's legal and constitutional landscape. As a diplomat, he elevated India's voice on the world stage, fostering dialogue and understanding. As a scholar, he championed the richness of India's civilizational heritage while embracing modernity with equal conviction. His deep appreciation for India's global diaspora, of which I was a member at the time he met me, was evident in his pivotal role in making the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas a reality in 2003, a celebration that continues to strengthen the bond between India and its people across the world. At home, his leadership of the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts reflected his lifelong dedication to preserving and promoting India's vast artistic and intellectual traditions. As for Manu Singhvi, I think I won't add to the fact that we are both colleagues in the same party, have had many ups and downs in common in recent years, but I will let you into a snippet. We first met when we both climbed a hill. I wish I could truthfully say it was a mountain, but we climbed a hill in Davos sometime in the mid-90s, 96 or 97, together. And I must say that Manu, his father was very much alive at the time. We spoke at the time about his father as well. Had the sense that Dr. L.M. Singhvi's vision extended very much beyond his time, bridging generations, and upholding the values of democracy, justice, and cultural integrity that his son has upheld over the years. So today, as we gather in his memory, we not only celebrate his towering achievements, but also reaffirm the ideals that he and now his son so passionately upheld. It's in this spirit that I'll turn to the address today that in some ways echoes Dr. Singhvi's legacy, the quiet and yet formidable force of soft power in the world. As influence shifts increasingly from military and economic might to cultural and intellectual leadership, India's soft power stands as a vital asset. Dr. Singhvi embodied the strength through ideas, dialogue, and a vision of India that transcends borders. And I hope that despite the fact that the world in some ways seems to be moving back towards an emphasis on power and the authority that comes from it, that we will still reflect on how useful, indeed how formidable, the soft power is for all of us to appreciate. But let's define terms of what does soft power mean to begin with. The man who coined this term, the former Harvard professor, my good friend Joseph Nye, came up with it in 1990 to account for the influence that a country wields beyond its military or hard power. Traditionally, of course, power in world politics was seen in terms of military power. The side with the larger army was always likely to win. But even in the past, this wasn't actually enough. After all, the US lost the Vietnam War. The Soviet Union was defeated in Afghanistan. And the US discovered in the first few years after its occupation of Iraq the wisdom of Talleyrand's adage that the one thing you cannot do with a bayonet is to sit on it. So hard power didn't help very much in running the country they'd conquered. And that's where soft power comes in. As Nye put it, a country's power rests on its ability to alter the behavior of others to get what it wants. So it can be through coercion, sticks, payments, or inducements, carrots, or attraction, and that's soft power. So if you have that ability to attract through your cultural assets, your values, your foreign policies, then you can economize on the sticks and the carrots. Enter soft power, both as an alternative to hard power and as a complement to it. To quote Nye, the soft power of a country rests primarily on three resources: its culture in places where it's attractive to others, its political values when it lives up to them at home and abroad, and its foreign policies when they are seen as legitimate and having moral authority, unquote. Now I'd go slightly beyond that A country's soft power, to me, emerges from the world's perception of what that country is all about. The associations and attitudes conjured up in the global imagination by the mere mention of a country's name is often a more accurate gauge of its soft power than a dispassionate analysis of its foreign policies. In this sense, soft power acts as both an alternative and a complement to hard power. Soft power is what people think about a country as soon as they hear its name. A hard power is what they feel when they confront a country. Hard power is exercised. Soft power is evoked. Now, for Nye, who introduced the concept to the world in the early 90s and developed it further in his seminal book, The Paradox of American Power, in 2002, the United States is the archetypal exponent of soft power. So the fact is that the US is the home of Boeing and Coke, and Google and Apple, Microsoft and MTV, Hollywood and Disneyland, Levi's and YouTube, McDonald's and Starbucks, in short, of most of the major products that dominate daily life around our globe. So the attractiveness of these assets and of the American lifestyle of which they are emblematic is that they permit the US to persuade others to adopt the US agenda, so the argument runs, rather than relying purely on the dissuasive or coercive hard power of military force. But of course, we're not here to discuss the US. In his own book, in fact, Nye pointed out that in today's information era, 3 types of countries are likely to gain soft power and so succeed. And I quote again, those whose dominant cultures and ideals are closer to prevailing global norms, which he said now emphasize liberalism, pluralism, autonomy. We can question that today. Those with the most access to multiple channels of communication and thus more influence over how issues are framed, and those whose credibility is enhanced by their domestic and international performance, unquote. So as Nye attested, soft power has been pursued with success by many countries over the years. When France lost its war of 1870 to Prussia, one of its most important steps to rebuild the nation's shattered morale and enhance its prestige was to create the Alliance Française, to promote the French language and literature throughout the world. French culture has remained a major selling point for French diplomacy ever since. The UK has a British Council, the Swiss have Pro Helvetia, and Germany, Spain, Italy, and Portugal have respectively institutes named for Goethe, Cervantes, Dante Alighieri, and Camões. The US itself has used officially sponsored initiatives, from the Voice of America, now being dismantled as we heard, to the Fulbright scholarships, to promote its soft power around the world. India has its more modest Council for Cultural Relations, ICCR, that seeks to promote Indian cultural exchanges internationally. Arguably, in comparison, none of these has had the same meteoric expansion as their Chinese equivalents, known as the Confucius Institutes, which China has been aggressively establishing across the world in a bid to promote Chinese culture and Mandarin language education. As of 2024, the Chinese had already set up 525 Confucius Institutes and 1,076 Confucius classrooms in 142 countries, including 165 in Europe and 112 in the US, all either completely or partially aided directly by the Office of the Chinese Language Council International, known as Hanban. These have their own strategic implications and considerations, given that 135 of these institutions were carefully placed in the 51 countries that fell on the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, as well as 48 institutes in Africa, a continent that China has been looking at with great interest. So in today's world, soft power has become a key tool of geopolitical strategy embraced across the globe. With instant mass communication fueled by the internet, countries are judged by a global audience constantly consuming news, images, and viral content. Soft power is not just about governmental action. Hollywood and MTV have arguably done much more to shape America's image than any official effort, Voice of America or whatever. And as the saying goes, even those protesting outside the US embassies around the world have been known to chant, "Yankee, go home, but take me with you." So soft power, in other words, is created partly by governments and partly despite governments, partly by deliberate action, partly by accident. Deliberate action is what you call cultural diplomacy, but no amount of diplomacy can do much about the basic perceptions of a country around the world, the stories that are told about it, whether it likes them or not. India's cultural diplomacy is the quiet power of its civilization in motion, a power that can't command but should compel. When millions around the world roll out yoga mats on International Yoga Day, they aren't just performing a series of postures. They are engaging with a tradition that embodies balance between ancient wisdom and modern wellness. In doing so, they embrace a cultural gift from India that goes beyond the physical, fostering mindfulness, self-discipline, and interconnectedness. India's leadership in promoting yoga globally, marked by us getting the UN to nearly unanimously recognize International Yoga Day, highlights its soft power influence. What began as our initiative in 2014 has grown into a worldwide movement, with nations embracing yoga's universal appeal as part of our cultural diplomacy. A 2016 study found that over 36 million Americans practice yoga. I'm sure the number is higher today. Figures like former President Obama have endorsed it. Today, yoga is embedded in corporate boardrooms, academic institutions, diplomatic spaces, a quite a powerful testament to India's role in fostering balance and harmony worldwide. Now, that's conscious projection, that's cultural diplomacy. But when you have a huge influence on the world without the government having anything to do with it, that's different, and that's real soft power, which is where Bollywood comes from, right? The popular cinema, what used to be Bombay, playing a vital role in this cultural tapestry. And of course, Bollywood goes beyond Bombay, because the recent global triumph of RRR, crowned by the Oscar for a Telugu song, right? Natu Natu, is a testament to more than just creative brilliance. It signifies a storytelling revolution, one that carries many Indian qualities, values, aspirations, and identity to the world stage. This victory is not only a celebration of the dynamism of Indian cinema, but also reinforces Bollywood's role as a potent instrument of Indian soft power, embedding India's spirit into the global imagination. Today, Indian cinema's international success and influence have elevated Bollywood as a formidable force of our soft power, reshaping global perceptions and expanding India's cultural footprint on the world stage. This influence is not accidental, and it's not new. Indian cinema has long served as a powerful tool for our soft power. In 1946, a film called Dharti Ke Lal resonated with the Soviet Union, its socialist themes aligning with the then prevalent ideological values, an early indication of Bollywood's potential to go beyond borders. By 1952, Aan became the first Indian film to secure global release, translated into multiple languages, further cementing this capacity to transcend cultures. Many Indian travelers in the former Soviet Union were startled for decades when taxi drivers would burst into robust renditions of the 1950s Bollywood song Awara Hoon. This impact continued to spread around the world. By 2016, Dangal had made a similar impact in China, resonating with audiences through its themes of perseverance, love, and family. So, these deep cultural connections, from Dharti Ke Lal in the Soviet Union in 1946 to Dangal in China 70 years later, Indian cinema has shaped perceptions by telling universal stories through an Indian lens. I remember hearing from an Indian diplomat once that in the 1990s Syria, when Hafez al-Assad, the dictator, was at his peak, the only portraits permitted in Damascus to be as large as his were those of the Indian superstar Amitabh Bachchan. Many African leaders have reminisced to me of my UN days about growing up in villages where the highlight of their childhood was the arrival of the latest Bollywood film. This is an affinity that India must continue to nurture. But it does mean, all of this, that India's claims to a global leadership role in the world of the 21st century lie in the aspects and products of Indian society and culture that the world finds attractive. And these assets may not directly persuade people to support India, but of course they go a long way towards enhancing India's intangible standing in the world's eyes. Now, the roots of India's soft power run deep. Ours is a civilization that over millennia has offered refuge and, more important, religious and cultural freedom to Jews, Parsis, several varieties of Christians and Muslims. The Jews came to the southwestern Indian coast centuries before Christ with the destruction by the Babylonians of their first temple. And they knew no persecution on Indian soil until the Portuguese arrived in the 16th century to inflict it. Christianity arrived on Indian soil with St. Thomas the Apostle, doubting Thomas of the Bible, who came to the Malabar coast sometime before 52 AD and was welcomed on shore, or so oral legend has it, by a flute-playing Jewish girl. He made many converts, so there are Indians today whose ancestors were Christian well before any Europeans had ever discovered Christianity. In Kerala, where Islam came through traders, travelers, and merchants who had been coming and going for centuries before Islam, rather than by the sword, the Zamorin of Calicut was so impressed by the seafaring skills of this community that he issued a decree obliging every fisherman's family in his kingdom to bring up one son as a Muslim to man his all-Muslim navy. The Indian culture, the Indian soft power lies in the wail of the Muslim muezzin routinely blending with the chant of the mantras of the Hindu temple and the tinkling of church bells accompanying the Sikh Gurudwara's reading of verses from the Guru Granth Sahib. And by the way, that's not just a metaphor. That's my neighborhood when I went to high school in Calcutta in the late 60s. It's exactly what I heard all day long. That is an India that fully embraces the world. Indeed, the British historian E.P. Thompson wrote that this heritage of diversity is what makes India, quote, perhaps the most important country for the future of the world. All the convergent influences in the world, he wrote, run through this society. There is not a thought that is being thought in the West or the East that is not active in some Indian mind, unquote. I'm glad a Brit wrote that and not an Indian. But that Indian mind has been shaped by remarkably diverse forces, ancient in Hindu tradition, myth, scripture, the impact of Islam and Christianity, and 2 centuries of British colonial rule, which has given me the language I'm speaking to you today. Now, the result is unique. Though there are some who think and speak of India as a purely Hindu country, you can argue that Indian civilization is an evolved hybrid. We cannot speak of Indian culture today without Qawwali, the poetry of Ghalib, or for that matter, the game of cricket, our de facto national sport. I think it was Ashish Nandi who memorably said, cricket is now so embedded in our country, it's actually an Indian game accidentally discovered by the British, which I think sums it up. Now, when an Indian dons national dress for a formal event, he wears a variant of the sherwani, which did not exist in India before the Muslim invasions. In the breadth and not just the depth of its cultural heritage lies the roots of some of our soft power. And of course, one of the very few generalizations we can safely make about India is that nothing can be taken for granted about our country. Not even its name, for the name India comes from the river Indus, which flows in Pakistan. Now, that anomaly, of course, is easily explained because Pakistan was hacked off the stoop shoulders of India by the departing British in 1947, but it's true that India's nationalism is indeed very rare indeed. I mean, there's the no doubt apocryphal story of the 2 political science professors at Jindal Global University discussing a particular problem, and one professor says to the other, you know how we can solve this? We can do this and this and this, and we can solve it. And the second professor says, yes, that will work in practice, but will it work in theory? Indian nationalism works in practice. It doesn't work in theory because none of the classic theories of nationalism can be applied to India. It's not based on language, since our constitution recognizes 23, and there are 35, according to the ethno-linguists, that are spoken by more than 1 million people each, not to mention 22,000 distinct dialects. It's not based on geography, because the natural geography of the subcontinent, framed by the mountains and the sea, the whole Bharatvarsh of the Vedas, has been hacked by the partition of 47. It's not based on ethnicity, because the Indian ethnicity accommodates a diversity of racial types. And many Indians have more in common ethnically with so-called foreigners than with other Indians, right? Because Indian Punjabis and Bengalis, for example, are ethnically kin to Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, respectively, rather than to Poonawallahs and Bangaloreans. And our nationalism is not based on religion because we're home to every faith known to mankind, with the possible exception of Shintoism. And Hinduism, which is a faith without a national organization, no established church or ecclesiastical hierarchy, no Hindu pope, no Hindu Mecca, no Hindu sacred book, no single sacred book, we have plenty, no uniform beliefs, no uniform modes of worship, not even a Hindu Sunday, because you can choose to worship your special Ishtadevta on any day of the week, exemplifies therefore as much our collective diversity as it does our common cultural heritage. So Indian nationalism is the nationalism of an idea. The idea of what one might stand Peter Pan on his head and describe as an ever land, emerging from an ancient civilization, united by a shared history, sustained by pluralist democracy. Pluralism is a reality that emerges from the very nature of the country. It's a choice made inevitable by India's geography and reaffirmed by its history. And as I've often argued, we're all minorities in India because we are a land embracing many. And our land may accommodate and indeed celebrate differences of caste, creed, color, culture, cuisine, conviction, costume, and custom, and still rally around a consensus, a democratic consensus on the simple principle that in our democracy you don't really need to agree all the time, so long as you agree on the ground rules of how you will disagree. The reason that India survived all the stresses and strains that have beset it for nearly 8 decades, and that led so many, especially in the 50s and so on, to predict its imminent disintegration, is that it maintained consensus on how to manage without consensus. Acceptance of difference, Vivekananda's favorite phrase, rather than mere tolerance, is the Indian secret. Today, unfortunately, some in positions of authority seem to be scorning these ground rules, which are enshrined alongside the idea of India in our constitution. That's why it's imperative today more than ever to reaffirm them. Part of the global respect that India has enjoyed comes from its ability to serve as an inspiring example of the successful management of diversity, despite all the challenges we've faced and overcome. And in this spirit, our soft power reflects India's essence. It's neither wielded like a sword nor brandished like a shield, but radiates as a quiet force that shapes perceptions, nurtures goodwill, and builds bridges across divides. Unlike the blunt instruments of coercion, soft power thrives on persuasion. While cultural diplomacy can help build and project soft power, most people can see propaganda for what it is. It's what they think you are that really matters, whether you're trying to show it or not. But there's also a foundational connection that has given us an intangible advantage for our country. India's multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-party, pluralistic civilization and democracy has emerged as an attraction to many trying to move in the same direction. Our parliamentary institutions and procedures, our manner of conducting free and fair elections, all part of this. Our ability to involve the non-governmental sector, civil society, in the quest for inclusive growth are also important lessons, which many African countries, for example, want to imbibe from us. So much so that African countries, African leaders have often told me, look, I mean, China is admirable, but we can't ever be like them. We could be like you, so we want to learn from you. That is part of the message. And this sort of creates the surround sound, as it were, on which India's global leadership can stand. Without the soft power of cultural attraction to foster goodwill and understanding, diplomacy would be viewed as transactional rather than transformative. It's through the strength of our cultural exports, from yoga to cinema, from cuisine to fashion, from Ayurveda to cricket, that India has constructed the platform to influence others, and it's that cultural influence that elevates our leadership on the world stage. Now, this can be built upon in more concrete ways. It doesn't have to be just about all of this cultural perception. India's vaccine diplomacy during the COVID pandemic stands as a powerful example of leadership rooted in responsibility and solidarity. By delivering made-in-India vaccines to over 100 nations, India demonstrated its capacity to extend a helping hand when it mattered most. Leveraging its position as the world's vaccine manufacturing hub, India's exports of vaccines, both as aid and commercially, reach nations across West Asia, Africa, Latin America, and of course our own immediate neighborhood. And that reinforced India's standing as a force for good in the world, reflecting our humanitarian spirit, and that too adds to our soft power. Now, this was, of course, complemented by sending Indian military doctors to Nepal, the Maldives, to Kuwait, organizing online training for healthcare workers across South Asia, engagement with global platforms like Gavi, and so on, the Pan-African E-Network. So India addressed immediate health concerns while laying the groundwork for long-term international cooperation. And that helped affirm India's position as a global leader, steering discourse and shaping solutions within multilateral platforms. This dynamic engagement has solidified India's standing as a fulcrum of global health diplomacy and made India a trusted partner in potential times of stress. So that's part of soft power too, because you have a conscious attempt at a particular kind of health diplomacy, which carried the values of compassion, cooperation, global partnership to the world, building goodwill, strengthening diplomatic ties, and elevating national stature. So that's a deliberate effort which is made to serve the ends of diplomacy. But you can also have other kinds of activities which have nothing to do with actually promoting diplomacy as such, but which can contribute to your soft power. Take space exploration, for example. It's an arena historically reserved for a select few. Achievements are often synonymous with national prestige and power. And we launched a space program, you remember, when we were still a poor developing country. Much of our population were living in ways that didn't belong even in the 20th century, the space era. There was a classic photograph many of you may have seen by Henri Cartier-Bresson that showed Indians transporting rocket parts on a bullock cart. But India nonetheless persevered with its space program, and it's triumphed. And two recent episodes have been striking. The first, India's Mangalyaan Mars orbiter mission in 2014 made India the fourth nation in the world and the first in Asia after failures by Japan and China to successfully reach Mars orbit, and the first country in the world to do so on its first attempt. The mission was also remarkably cost-effective, with a budget of approximately $74 million, somewhat lower than that of the Hollywood space movie Gravity. The mission demonstrated India's capability to design, plan, and execute an interplanetary mission, showcasing the country's growing prowess in space technology, provided valuable data and images of Mars, contributing to our understanding of the red planet, and not only was it the cheapest Mars mission imaginable, but though it was originally planned as a 6-month mission, Mangalyaan exceeded expectations. And how? By operating for over 7 years and completing more than 8,000 orbits around Mars. And then India continued to rewrite the rule book with its Chandrayaan-3, which landed near the lunar South Pole in August 2023, making India the fourth nation to achieve a soft landing on the moon, but the first country to do so near the moon's southern pole, shattering the idea that sophisticated space exploration is the domain of superpowers alone. Now, this was also a significant achievement, as that region of the moon is believed to contain water and ice, or rather water ice, I suppose, which could be crucial for future lunar exploration and potential human habitation. Now, all of this speaks volumes not just about India's technical prowess, but about its ability to open new avenues for international collaboration, inviting the world to partake in its dreams of a shared future among the stars. And so, what's happened here is that India has emerged as a formidable force shaping the global space order and projecting in that process its capacity for innovation, its vision, its collaborative spirit, all of which, of course, add to the perception of India, at least in these circles, and therefore to its soft power. Now, India's been careful to use these successful missions also to position itself as a partner of choice for nations seeking to join the frontier of space exploration. The historic soft landing near the moon's south pole is a powerful signal to the world. India is a nation of solutions, ready to extend a hand for collective progress, a commitment already reflected in initiatives like the South Asian satellite, where India's space technology has been shared with its South Asian neighbors. And that's all, in some ways, a reflection of how soft power can work through the quiet confidence of a nation that channels its intellectual and technological capital to inspire, to lead, but also to collaborate and to share. In fact, if you Google the words frugal innovation, you'll find the first 20 hits all relate to India. And that's, I think, a reflection of our country's aptitude at becoming a global player in innovation. Indian innovators have transformed the world of medicine by inventing the world's cheapest electrocardiogram machine, by reducing the cost of a hepatitis B vaccine, which used to be $15 a shot, to about 10 cents. The small budget Tata Nano car, though considered a domestic marketing disaster in India, was actually a triumph of no-frills engineering to world-class standards. And I remember it took the Geneva Auto Salon by storm that year. This sparked off talk of Indovation, Indian innovation. I was even asked to inaugurate an India Innovation Center at the University of Toronto in 2011. Now, it's all a far cry from the days when the legendary Jamshedji Tata tried in the teeth of British opposition to set up a steel factory at the beginning of the 20th century. A colonial official of the day then sneered that he would personally eat every ounce of steel that an Indian was capable of producing. It's a pity he didn't live to see the day that a descendant of Jamshedji Tata bought the remnants of British steel by acquiring Chorus a few years ago. It might have given him a rather bad case of indigestion. Now, one more thing to say, since we've just been celebrating today the safe return to Earth of Sunita Williams. And of course, we take no credit for her. She was neither born here, nor educated here, nor trained here, so that's a different matter. But the boundless energy and reach of our diaspora is worth being reminded of, because from the bustling streets of New York to the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, and apparently when you're stuck in space for 9 months, you bring out in many ways the Indian diaspora's role as a bridge to the world, playing a crucial role in many ways. The rise of Indian-born leaders heading Google and Microsoft, CEOs at Fortune 500 companies, from Adobe to Alphabet, Cognizant to Chanel, and even Starbucks, YouTube, IBM, and the World Bank, all headed by Indians, showcases a certain intellectual, managerial strength and drive that indirectly, of course, benefits India. These global achievers embody Indian values: education, hard work, adaptability, and democracy, and pluralism, enhancing our reputation as a hub of talent, innovation, and leadership. In so doing, they unconsciously help to reshape global perceptions of India, positioning us as a nation that seamlessly blends age-old traditions with cutting-edge innovation and resilience with transformative progress. This is also soft power, and we don't have to thank our government for it. When people argue that cultural diplomacy is important, they tend to focus on what governments can do to showcase culture and promote Indian society. But the message that really matters is the one that tells the world who we are, not what we want to show. So all of this in many, many ways, I'm taking too long, I think, over this lecture. But I will say that in many, many ways, all of this is the soft power that I want to share with you all about. And increasingly, we are able to project that through a concept that I first spoke of 2 decades ago, I'm glad has now become fashionable, multi-alignment, where I argued that today's global order is a web of interconnected networks where influence is dispersed and collaboration is key. Multi-alignment allows India to navigate this network world with agility and purpose, engaging in multiple coalitions and platforms that serve different objectives. And this, of course, is a reflection of the crucial role we're able to play across the world, and that advances universal principles as well as Indian values and soft power. We are pushing these universal values of the UN. We're addressing regional needs through SARC or BIMSTEC. We're championing the Global South and the G77. And we're shaping the global economy as a key member of the G20. We're bridging the aspirations of developing nations with the responsibilities of developed ones. And this ultimately acknowledges the complexity of our times as well. But I wanted to say that in many ways, this, in our globalizing world, has been supported and buoyed up by our soft power. Globalization has both sparked and allayed many Indians' fears that economic liberalization will bring with it cultural imperialism of a particularly insidious kind, that Game of Thrones and burgers will supplant Garba dances and Bhelpuri. Instead, India's experience with Western consumer products has actually demonstrated that we can drink Coca-Cola without becoming Coca-Colized. Indians will not become any less Indian if, in Mahatma Gandhi's famous metaphor, we open the doors and windows of our country and let foreign winds blow through our house, because Indians are strong enough not to be blown off our feet by these winds. Our popular culture has proved resilient enough to compete successfully. Masala dosas can hold their own with McDonald's. And indeed, yoga has become so vital as an integral part of the global wellness movement. The strength of Indianness has lain in its ability to absorb foreign influences and even to transform them by a peculiarly Indian alchemy into something that belongs naturally on the soil of India. And so I think we could argue from India's experience that it's not the magnitude of a nation's military might that truly defines its influence, but rather its ability to weave compelling narratives, to stir admiration and forge enduring bonds across continents. Joseph Knight talked about the land of the better story always prevailing over the land with the bigger army. I think it's absolutely right. Hard power may coerce, but soft power inspires, endures, and transforms. Diplomacy rooted in soft power achieves results that are not only impactful but also sustainable. One could argue that Mahatma Gandhi won India its independence through the use of soft power, because non-violence and satyagraha were indeed classic uses of soft power before the term was even dreamt of. Yet hard power tends to work better domestically than internationally. An autocratic state might not prioritize crafting a soft power narrative for its people, but without one, it struggles to earn the goodwill of the global community. Consider the cases of China and Tibet, or with the Uyghurs, and Russia and Ukraine, or against its dissidents. Two powers that have demonstrated their capacity to wield military might with impunity, and yet the moral and diplomatic fallout from these actions has left them increasingly isolated or at odds with much of the international community. While military victories could be triumphs in the short term, both countries now grapple with the enduring strength of the global sympathy enjoyed by their victims, and a tarnished global image as a result, which diminishes their standing in the eyes of the world. This serves as a sobering reminder that military prowess, however formidable, does not equate to global respect or influence. True leadership on the world stage demands far more than the ability to project force. It requires the capacity to engage, to persuade, to cultivate authentic relationships that resonate deeply across borders. But at the same time, soft power only becomes credible when there is hard power behind it. That's why the US has been able to make so much of its soft power. We perhaps had a slightly mixed record on how we've used our hard power. Within our own subcontinent, have sometimes come across as if we're caught in a cleft stick. We tread softly in our anxiety not to come across as a regional bully, but in so doing we embolden those who are prepared to test us. For decades after the victory over Pakistan in '71, we were really reluctant to evolve a hard power strategic doctrine. At the same time, if there is an attempt to do something different today, that could easily dent our image abroad, as we've seen with the accusations against India from the government of Canada not long ago. Now, at the same time, we must understand soft power doesn't actually meet our security challenges. An Islamist terrorist who enjoys a Bollywood movie will still have no compunction about setting off a bomb in a Delhi market. This has actually happened. The US has already learned that the perpetrators of 9/11 ate their last dinner at a McDonald's. Didn't change anything, right? So to counter the threat of terrorism, there is no substitute for hard power. But I would argue that for China and Russia, kung fu movies, the Bolshoi Ballet, will still win far more admirers internationally than the People's Liberation Army or even Siberian oil reserves. In each case, the latter is what the state relies upon, but hard power without soft power just stirs up resentments and enmities, while a soft power without hard power is a confession of weakness. We need both. Hillary Clinton once used to speak of smart power. That's what we need. Now, for India to amplify its influence globally, we have to address our own internal challenges. We have to ensure that our people are healthy, nourished, and secure, and not just from the specter of terrorism, but from the persistent realities of poverty, hunger, and ill health. And if we can overcome all of that, yes, the goodwill we enjoy across Africa, the Arab world, and even Afghanistan has largely resulted from cultural exports like movies and TV shows. But at the same time, it's when we get our own act together, when we are right at home, that we will truly earn their respect. India has transitioned now from being primarily a recipient of foreign aid to a donor itself, providing economic assistance to countries in need, particularly in Africa and in South Asia. And I think that's again something that's extremely important in this regard. I mentioned vaccine diplomacy earlier. But we have to ensure that what we are at home also wins respect abroad. Our democracy, our thriving free media, our civil society, all of this are vital in presenting a model of diversity management in the globalized world. And unfortunately, they can also be undermined by our domestic politics. In the past, to use that phrase of Nye's, India has managed to be the land of the better story. As a society with a thriving free press, with people whose creative energies are daily encouraged to express themselves in a variety of appealing and not so appealing ways, India has an extraordinary ability to tell stories that are more persuasive and attractive than those of its rivals. But this is not about propaganda, by the way, because I think it will not work if it's directed from above, least of all by a government. But sadly, governmental actions can undermine such a story. And that is, I think, very important to avoid a global perception that India is now governed by obscurantist or intolerant forces that are determined to put various minorities and liberals in their place. That would certainly undermine and derail our soft power projection. I remember way back in 2004, when I was still at the UN, I was traveling through the Gulf countries for the UN, the astonishment and admiration with which I was greeted by so many ministers and high-ranking Arab officials in the Gulf about our election results. They couldn't believe that we'd had an election which had been won by a political party led by a woman born in Italy of Roman Catholic faith, who had then made way for a Sikh to be sworn as by a Muslim president in a country that was 80% Hindu. And this, when they said this to me, I said, yeah, but this is India. We're not trying to impress you. This is who we are. That, I think, is ultimately something we should not lose sight of the benefits of, and we should not lose sight of the value that gives us in the world. The ability to project India as a land of pluralism, tolerance, and Gandhiism surely should not be allowed to be undermined by allowing some to promote intolerance, communal hatred, and minority insecurity within the country. I think some people must learn that they cannot promote Make in India abroad while condoning hate in India at home. I wouldn't belabor the point, but I think it's important that we recognize that all of these things are part of the soft power narrative of India. There is much for us to be proud of in our civilization, in our culture, in our heritage, in our actions, and even in our diplomacy, as I've described it to all of you today. But if you want to value soft power, we must be conscious of the qualities that are so attractive about our culture and that give us that soft power in the world, and we must ensure those qualities are not undermined by recklessly irresponsible and often semi-educated individuals who enjoy a free hand, sometimes in our domestic politics. But I'm an optimist. I believe that India can reverse this trend, that we will not let the spectre of religious intolerance and political opportunism diminish the great asset that is our soft power. Our celebration of democracy, our embrace of diversity, our active civil society, defending human rights, promoting environmentalism, fighting injustice, all of that are free, irrelevant, and I was going to say irreverent, but also very often irrelevant press is also a reflection of our democratic ethos. If we preserve all of this, then respect in the global arena will follow. And at the same time, we have to overcome our challenges of poverty, of ill health, of disease, of illiteracy, and so on, knowing that our soft power is not something that can supplant our basic elements of hard power, but only to complement it. If we as a nation succeed in preserving our heritage of diversity and democracy, if we remain open to the contest of ideas, unafraid of the prowess or the products of the outside world, and determined to liberate and fulfill the boundless creative energies of our people, then surely we will become a beacon of inspiration, and we will tell the world stories it is eager to hear and to repeat, carving a path of leadership defined not by domination, but by the power to inspire. And I think in that way, we should be able, in many ways, for India to tell stories that the rest of the world is not just happy to hear, but is glad to repeat. That may well be the most valuable way in which we can exercise soft power in the 21st century world and help ourselves to shape a future that resonates with the noblest ideals of humanity. Thank you very much, all of you.
I'm going to invite Professor Sheila Patnaik, our registrar, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Raj, and good evening, everyone. It is such a challenge for me to stand before each one of you and then to share my remarks or even to propose a vote of thanks. But all I'm going to say is that this evening has been quite enchanting, Dr. Thaoor and Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Well, there is a great sense of learning always listening to you, but even there is a great sense of, or rather, immeasurable sense of happiness listening to you. It's like sitting or standing next to a flowing stream of water with rhythmic patterns, and that makes us happy and happier. And so it's like sense of learning and sense of joy makes this evening more memorable. And we are also so grateful to you, Dr. Singhvi, for the endowment. We will be fully committed to all the objectives of the endowment, and this also not only has facilitated providing greater access to quality legal education in the country, and even offering students opportunities to diversify in the areas of law, international law and international relations, but it's also a great step ahead in terms of spearheading the culture of philanthropy in higher education in India. So we are thankful to you for the endowment and for the trust. And it's a befitting lecture, a tribute to Dr. L.M. Singhvi as well, in terms of what all Dr. Shashi Thaoor has shared, a comprehensive and a compelling idea of soft power and India's role as a growing economy and a nation which has that influential role in emerging as, a powerful nation in the world, and it's important for each one of us even to sustain this soft power, and we all belong even to that particular community wherein we can sort of make our observations felt and even make our impressions felt all around the world. Thank you so much, and thanks to each one of you for joining us.